don't look at a player's plan overall, because we have all different skill levels, and we're playing this game for fun. And when you see a scenario, you say, okay, I need to attack this building, and I'm going to do it this way. And then you're going to do it one way. Mark's going to do another way. Nutball's going to do another way. And Tony's going to do another way. But none of the ways is wrong, is because we're all here to have fun, and each one of those methods can be successful. Can be successful, and that's the whole key. It's like I could beat some players, I could lose some players. Do the dice win the game for me, or do my maneuvers move the game for me? Well, sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's one or the other, and it'll be a mixture of it, and that's the fun of it. It's not the same thing all over and over and over again. You may make all the mistakes in the world. It was really funny. In comparison, I was watching a video last night, and then we'll get right to your thing. It was some NFL highlight about like the worst play in NFL history or some shit like that. And what it did was, the Jets had the ball on the 3-yard line. Well, they had the ball on the 10-yard line, and then they had to go. They went to go score a touchdown. Well, they lost like 7 yards, and then they got like a first down, and then they showed the progression of plays to the point where they scored the touchdown. Well, in that series of 97 yards where they had to progress, they actually only earned 8 yards of total offense. So they actually did nothing. And the defensive team, all they did was continue to commit penalty. So the offensive team did nothing, absolutely did nothing to score that touchdown. The defensive team did all the work for them. And the same thing with ASL. If the defensive team doesn't react properly, then the mistakes they make, you can capitulate on them, even though your plan is absolute garbage, So it's all based upon that combination. And that's kind of why I like to see more tournaments be structured such that players are playing other players closer to their caliber, so you have more competitive play. If you have players that are widely skilled, the first 1 to 3 rounds are going to be, better player beats the shit out of the smaller players. Hey, I'm learning something. Not really. You're learning that you're getting your ass kicked by this better player. Whereas if you have again, I always say your pocket of skills that you have. If I know I can attack this building 8 different ways. If my opponent only has 4 ways of defending it, I might come out on top. But we're equivalent in skill level, and so therefore I'm playing against my peers. You only get better if you play someone slightly better than you, because it's sort of like I'm trying to create some stuff to bridge SK to ASL, and people put out these these are the things that are different from SK to ASL, and it goes pages and pages and pages and pages. Like, I'm not going to read that. Why? Well, there's no point in reading that. I'll just read the ASL rulebook. I mean, because it's like doing double duty. And so if you break it down, I only want to do these 3 things better than my opponent. And so therefore you pick up on those little things. That's how you learn ASL, is you play a scenario you haven't played before. Maybe it uses certain, different, vehicles. When you guys first got into vehicles, when you guys first got to guns, it added a little bit more rules. You started playing with that. You weren't familiar with them, but then you became familiar with them. And then you started adding more of your strategies into the repertoires of, okay, I now know how to hit with a gun. What can I do with it? What types of ammo does it have? What enemies am I defending against? Do I have to hit them in the buildings, or can I just smoke them and neutralize them that way? At that point, once you become familiar with those rules, you begin to expand your essentially repertoire of offensive and defensive capabilities with that weapon. And just saying, just listing off the, I looked at the list, and it's like, holy shit. I have a 10 list to begin with of getting into ASL from SK, but all the little itty bitty stinking little details that you can list, they did list. It's like, wow, none of this is necessary. All of this is stuff that you guys could pick up as you go along, and that's what everyone has done in ASL. No one's sat down and know exactly what the hell the heat of battle does, and how do I calculate a critical hit, stuff like that. They all went through the same thing, but you just do it bit by bit, by little, and you screw up things along the way, and that's that's what Craig's here for, is to gonna sort of reiterate some residual firepower examples, but it's just little by little learning, and again, when you're playing an excellent player in a tournament, you go to a tournament and you're 16 players, you're 15, you're playing player number 2. You're not going to learn much in that game other than how to lose in 2 turns, pretty much, because you pretty much just going to be overwhelmed. Just like playing basketball against Michael Jordan, he's got so many moves that you don't even can understand, that it's just not going to be a big deal. But if you're playing, a high school varsity player and you're just a casual player, there's some things that you can work with, and you might be able to compete with him a little bit on that level. And that's all I'm about, is a fairness, because the more fun you have at a tournament, if you're playing against your peers, everyone's pretty much going to be pretty much on the same level, and so the games can go either way at that point, and everyone's walking on eggshells, because you have a lot of times where people will go to tournaments and they'll lose the first 2 rounds on the first day. It's like, okay, I'm local, I'm gonna just dip. I've got no chance of winning any plaques or prizes or whatever the case may be. That doesn't happen a lot, but some guys, that's how they play, and that's whatever. But for the other guys, it's one less guy in the tournament roster. And I get to buy this round because so and so went home. I say, well, gee, that's exciting, that sort of thing. So, but if you're more with competitiveness, there aren't going to be some guys who just be blowing other people out. And I think it would be more exciting even for the top tier, like say the top 8 guys playing against each other and the bottom 8 guys playing against each other. Just have 2 little mini tournaments, the top tier and the secondary tier, and have prizes accordingly for them, and just use ratings to go up. Once you get up high in skill enough level, you'll enter the top tier or the 3rd tier or whatever the case may be, and therefore, no one wants to sit down and just waste 2 hours at a predetermined outcome. And if you have a player like with an ASL rating of like 1700 playing a player against 1500, which is average entry score, they're going to win technically percentage wise. Their win expectations like 85%. And so, if you look at some of the stats, I've looked at some of the stats, and that's about what it turns out to be, based upon the opponent's ratings, is they'll win 5 games and lose 1. So 85% of the time, he's just going to win the game. So you're just essentially kind of going through the motions. I mean, I know there's things that obviously can come into play after that, but for the most part, I mean, that's kind of what happens. And I would rather see, no worry, Craig. I would rather see a more competitiveness to it, so you don't see the same winners day after day after day after day. Let them face a challenge instead of just play. There's a 5 round match, a 5 round tourney, and there's like 20 guys or whatever. Their first 2 to 3 games are going to be pretty much buys, and their last 2 games are going to be against the top 8. Winners, like the 3-0s and the 4-0s and things like that. And at that point, you're only really playing 2 games for the championship, and that's just the reality of it. And why that hasn't been done in the past, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't see what the big deal. Everyone could play the same scenario. It's not like you have to pick a different scenario list. Just have 2 different things. The only thing you would have to do is buy another set of plaques. And what's that? $8 a plaque. $25. For 3 different plaques, so I don't know. I just think it would be far more competitive at that point. And the closer the games are, because a lot of you guys have been in a lot of games where it's been down to the last close combat, or my tank's gonna move off, and if he doesn't blow it up, he's gonna boom, and so a lot of times it's very close, and most of the time it's because you've got players that have played well during that game, and have reacted well and played well against each other, instead of just a guy getting blown out. Now Again, dice rolls notwithstanding. We know when that happens. I mean, it's just one of those things. You know, flamethrower never rolls out of. I was watching a game the other day. The guy, every single time he rolled his flamethrower attack, he rolled like a 3, and so there'd be just like fire just burn the whole thing, burn the whole town down. But he was just rolling 3s on his flamethrowers, and you know, nothing's gonna survive against a 3 versus a flamethrower. So it's just not gonna happen. And but you know, at that point, you either just run the hell away from the flamethrower, or smoke that sumbitch, and even then, it's not gonna be that much of a difference. You know, 24 firepower is still 24 firepower. Again, that sort of kind of reiterates my philosophy of is, do you actually need the 9-2 on that 16 firepower stack or the 20 firepower stack? The 20 firepower is going to be doing the damage by itself. You know, the 9-2 on a 12 shot, you know, essentially will convert that 12 shot to a 20 shot. You know, so now you have two charts of 20 that can do double damage, instead of one chart of 20 minus 2 and the other one of 12 plus 3. You know, so more balanced to that. I'd rather have 3 or 4 shots that are in the 12 plus 1 range than one giant shot, because the enemy can, you know, you guys know, you can just skulk. I just run away or split guys up, divide them up, and if you only give them one squad to shoot at, you know, you've got 24 factors just blowing up one guy. Well, that's kind of a waste of resources. Anyway, we'll let Craig do his thing after my blabbermouth has gone on, but that's kind of, you know, my philosophy. I don't know if you guys could follow that or whatever, but we'll let Craig do his thing here. He's going to talk about, go for it, Craig.
All right, so my topic for tonight is about residual. It's kind of basic for many of us, but there are some nuances that I think are obviously good to review and make sure that we understand properly. So basically, we'll go right from the standard. When a unit is attacked by defensive first fire, attacked in the movement phase, it's marked with a residual firepower counter equal to half of the highest firepower column used for that attack, right? So simple enough. So let's take a look here at, what am I looking at? So we got squad right here, 666. Here, he assault moves from R6 to R7. I got this stack here. It's going to fire on them. So total of firepower there is 16. So who can tell me what, easy math is the easiest part of this whole thing. What's the residual going to be firing on that squad? Anybody want to answer?
8.
8. So 16 half is 8. So we'll take a 8 firepower. And by the way, the maximum residual is a 12. So let's say we've got a leader in there who's going to direct that because we don't want to cower. There's CX. And we've got a smoke on there. Actually, not there. Let's say he had actually placed smoke first in that hex and then moved there. What's the residual going to be? So the operative part of the rule
4.
is that, what's that?
4.
Somebody have it? 4? So the residual firepower is, the amount is shifted left for each positive modifier, DRM, outside of the target hex. So the smoke, that's 2, so that's going to shift it left 2 columns. CX is going to shift it left a column. And oh, by the way, that 6 plus 1 is going to shift it left a column. So that's going to move 4 columns to the left from 8. So that's going to take it down to a, did I do this right? A 2 residual? 1, 2, 3. Oh, 1 residual.
1 residual.
Right?
Yep.
1 residual. So the things that most people forget, most people remember the hindrances, smoke and grain and orchards, but what I find myself oftentimes forgetting is CX, and especially, a positive leadership modifier. A negative leadership modifier is not going to shift it back to the right. So negative leadership modifiers will not affect that, but a positive leadership modifier would. All right. So let's look at another example. My 747 up here in J3. The assault moves to J4. This squad with the medium machine gun is going to fire up there. So first of all, what's the attack? Going to fire both the squad inherent firepower and the machine gun. And I assault move there.
Yep. So it would be an 8+1.
8+1. And then what's the residual?
In this case, I think it is 4 because I think you don't shift to the left if for height advantage.
Height advantage
No,
does not.
Yeah, I can never remember that one. You either do, you don't. It's well, of course, anything would be you either do it or you don't do it. But but yeah, it's opposite of almost everything else.
Yeah. And actually, I struggled with that one as well. I always forget, does height advantage affect residual? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
And then while I was prepping this, it suddenly came to me. It's positive modifiers outside of the target hex. Well, that height advantage is in the target hex. Mm-hmm. So now I'm never going to forget it. Now, if you think of it in that terms, the height advantage, goes towards the defender that's in his hex. So therefore, it does not affect residual. So the residual would be 4 there. Now, let's say that the color die and the attack was a 1. So it gets to keep rate of fire on the medium machine gun. What would the residual be, or what can it be?
Well,
anybody else want to answer besides Mark?
Besides Mark? Okay, all right, I'll be quiet.
Anybody?
It's either
another Mark.
Residual.
Oh, there we go.
So you can either forego the residual to keep rate, or put residual and lose rate. You get a choice.
Right. So if you want to keep rate, it's 2, and if you don't want to keep rate, it'll be 4. Most people, like me, I'm gonna try to keep rate. I'll take the lower residual. I've got, I'd rather have that 5 firepower machine gun firing somewhere else, right, with that long range. So exactly right. What if you rolled a 12 on the attack? What happened? What's the attack? Is it still an 8+1 on the attack, or is it a 4+1?
I think
so
you
obviously,
still
what we're talking
resolve
about,
it.
you roll it.
I think you still resolve the attack normally, and then the gun breaks, which means you don't get residual for a gun that breaks. Correct?
You don't. That's absolutely right. The residual would be 2 because a malfunction gun leaves no residual. All right, but one thing to keep in mind is when a machine gun malfunctions, it's flipped over after its attack. Now, granted, in this case, a 12 plus 1, 13 on the 8 chart is no effect, but there could be a situation where the malfunction machine gun included in that firepower, you could have an effect. So remember, the malfunction of the machine gun or of the weapon happens after the attack. Oh, and to me, it's, the malfunction machine gun isn't necessarily, it broke as soon as you pulled the trigger. It could be you were pulling the trigger and you just ran out of ammo. So you got that attack off, but there is no residual left from it. All right, let's see. Next example. Okay, so you fired in there. We'll say they leave the 4 residual. Now that 747 is going to put smoke into K5. So he uses two movement factors. What happens first? Do you take the residual attack first, or do you place the smoke first? Anyone? Bueller?
I'll try. Craig, it's Eric.
Yep. Yep.
I believe you make the smoke attempt first.
You make the smoke attempt. Well, the smoke attempt happens first, and if you are
Smoke
successful
count.
with your roll, you get the
Yes.
smoke. You have to expend the movement factors before you suffer the residual attack.
Right.
That's
and it
absolutely
may
right.
include dropping the smoke, which would affect
Right.
that. Which would affect
Well, does it? So now he successfully places the smoke. He's expended 2 movement factors. What is the residual attack for that unit up there now?
I'm not seeing. I'm audio only, so I need some help with this.
Okay. Here, I'll tell you what. Let me. I'm going to stream this.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So we're talking right up here.
Uh-huh.
The circle. He assault moved there, and then he placed the smoke there. So now he's got the residual attack. What is the residual attack that it's going to roll on?
He's oh, the resid's already there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the
just a
squad
straight
of the
on
machine gun fired up there, and it was
Yes.
and he left a 4
Right.
residual. So now the 747 expends 2 more movement factors to place that smoke.
Right.
So now we have to resolve the residual attack, right?
Yes. I misunderstood earlier. So yeah, I apologize. The resid's there. It's just a straight on. What is that for? Is he in the building?
No, it's open. It's
Yeah.
open ground there.
Straight on for attack.
So 4 flat.
4 flat is is what I'm going to guess, or what I'm
Does
gonna say.
anyone disagree with that?
Did you assault move from J3 previously?
Yes.
I say it's a 4-down-1 because he's in open ground.
Oh, but he is up on the hill, so I think it's, if I remember right, it's
height
not,
advantage.
I
No,
guess
he
I think
doesn't. There's no
advantage-
memory. There's no memory.
There's no
residual.
memory.
The residual does not
Oh.
remember the height advantage.
Yeah, you're right. It
That's
is
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
what's the
agree. I'm
attack?
changing mine to 4-1. I agree.
4-1. That's absolutely right. 4-1. So thereafter, any unit entering or expending movement factors in the same location, in the same movement phase, is attacked on the IFT with the firepower represented by that counter, and the TM, smoke of the target location, and any first fire non-assault movement or first fire movement in the open apply as a DRM. So in this case, even though the initial attack was an 8+1, the resid attack is a 4-1, which to me is an interesting way that works out. But as Tony said, residual doesn't have memory, doesn't know where it came from.
I noticed.
If he had not assault move the first move, would then that residual be a 4-2?
So if let's say the first move there was normal movement, so the first attack would be an 8 flat, right? +1 for height advantage, -1 for non-assault. So it would have been an 8 flat, and we'll just say it was no effect. Leaves 4 residual there, and now he's going to place smoke there for 2 movement factors. It's not assault movement, so it's a -1, and it's moving in the open for another -1. So the residual attack in that case would be 4-2.
Thanks.
Which is a very dangerous shot.
And if you look at your charts, the 8 even shot that initially fired upon him and the 4-2 are essentially the same attack. So when you add in the -2 modifier to your 4, if you roll a 7, you're going to achieve your 1 morale check, and a 7 on the 8 chart is a 1 morale check. So it's essentially very close to equivalence.
They're very close to the same. The one difference that I would point out is you can get a KIA on a 8 chart, but you can't get a KIA with a 4-2.
Sure you can.
Well, let me rephrase that. If you roll a 4 on the 4-2, it's a K2.
Right, it's slightly more damaging because you have the minus modifiers. Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
But they're roughly equivalent. But any low roll is gonna rip you a new one anyway.
Yeah.
But
right.
yeah, so yeah, that's that. And again, that's, as Craig points out, the importance of residual is, I mean, even if it's 1 or 2, gentlemen, that goes a long way, simply because of this -2 and -1 situations we have here. It goes a long way.
Same result if that was a DC place.
Now that we'll get to the DC. In fact, I'm going to be bringing that up right now. Let's put a pin in that. We're actually coming right up to it now.
Okay.
So let's say the attacker on his residual roll, he rolls 2 3s. He rolls a 6 on it. What's that result? And it was assault movement there, and he placed the smoke. So what is the result? Look at the chart. It's on the 4 chart.
1 morale check.
So it'd be a 4-1. Does I rolled doubles? Does it cower?
No cower for the resid.
No cower.
No.
Residual does not cower. Absolutely. That's right. That's where I was going with that. So cowering does not affect ordnance, vehicles, close combat, DC, or residual firepower attacks. All right. Then if we go to the idea of it was normal movement, he went there, he placed a 2 smoke, and then he continues on for there. Does he take residual moving out of the hex? And the pretty simple answer is no. But it specifically states in the rules, just in case there's any confusion, a unit expending movement factors to leave a location is not subject to residual firepower attack in the location it is leaving. So it's only entering the hex when you are, or expending movement factors in that hex when you're subject to the residual. All right, so we've got this example here. So now we've got this leader here with the DC, and he assault moves into there. So he's going to final fire, and he doesn't want to lose his machine gun, so he just fires his squad. 4 + 3, right? What's the residual that's left? Actually, I'm going to make it pull the smoke out of there. Not that it really matters. So 4 + 3, the residual is 2.
It's going to be, yep.
Okay. Now the leader expends 2 movement factors, put the DC on there. What happens? What do we do?
I think you check to see whether he survives that 2 resist.
Got to take a 2 up 3 residual
2 up
shot.
3. Or if the smoke was in there, it'd be a 2 up 5, right?
I thought you only got hit with resid in the same hex if your cover got worse somehow. Seem to remember.
So this
you know
is
he
hasn't taken this residual yet, right?
Yeah, but he took the shot that created the resid, right? Oh no,
correct.
He didn't. Oh yeah, no, he did.
So his first fired, he assault moves into there.
Mm-hmm.
He does a 2 + 3, and now there's residual. There wasn't residual there before he moved in. Now there's residual. So he places the DC, expends 2 movement factors, and this will be the first time he's faced that residual. So yes, he takes a 2 + 3.
Okay.
Now he expended 2 movement factors in doing that. Does he have to take 2 + 3 twice?
No.
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 No. for two reasons. One is it's kind of like expending those two movement factors simultaneously. Now, and you can only take residual once. So if we switch this around a little bit, and let's say, get this sorted out. Let's say the two residual was in there to begin with. He assault moves in, takes the 2+3 first, right? And the defender's like, I'm not going to do anything. And then he places that DC charge there. He's already been attacked by the residual. So even though he expended two more movement factors to go to place that DC, he cannot be attacked by the residual again. Only once, with one slight exception. And as Eric mentioned, if the residual, if he does some type of action where we'd have a less positive or more negative DRM associated with it. And as we've mentioned before in this group, the only example we can come up with that is if he picks up or if he successfully picks up a flamethrower, then rather than being a 2+3 shot, it'd be a 2+2, in which case you would roll for the residual again.
There's one other example which I just thought of because we're refreshing our things here. If the 8-0 breaks on the first residual attack, and because he assault moved in that location, he incurred a +3 dice roll modifier. If he breaks, broken units do not assault move, and so therefore the broken unit is now non-assault moving, and therefore be subjected to lower dice roll modifiers.
So now a 2+2.
You're right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Never really thought that.
But he'd be able to expend any movement points at that point, would he? He's broken.
The second movement factor is what he would be attacked on.
Yeah, but I don't know. That's a good question. Because the rules talks about executing movement factors simultaneously. Movement factors expended simultaneously. Example, 2 movement factors to enter a building do not cause multiple residual firepower attacks.
Right. But take an example of a unit, say a unit over here, or any other unit. Say this unit, not assault moves in this location here, right? And gets fired upon, and then gets pinned. Right. Then he's not going to be subject to some of the movement modifiers simply because he's a pinned unit. But if he were to break, then he would no longer be pinned and therefore be considered moving in the open non-assault movement.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never really.
I'm not sure if SK kind of covers that. I'm not sure if SK covers that, but at that point you would be because pinning you're not going to be subject to some of those modifiers. And so that's one of the other things is when you break, you're changing your condition, and broken units can't assault move. Therefore, that second movement factor, because he broke in the first movement factor, the second movement factor might subject him to, because he's now the -1 applies, it might subject him to that.
Yeah, the only part that I wonder about is the rules specifically say a unit can be attacked by residual firepower again in the same location if the unit expends additional movement factor in that location. And by doing so, the unit is subject to more negative DRM or less positive DRM. Are you expending more movement factors? Or are those 2 movement factors simultaneous? That almost sounds like a Perry says kind of, or a question for
more movement factors does not necessarily equate to an additional movement factor expenditure. So it's kind of it's not very clear. Not very clear.
No. So let's go to this. Let's say there's 2 residual in there already. These guys have final fired. So the leader assault moves there. He takes the 2 residual first, right? The first thing that happens. 2 plus 3 passes it easily. The defender decides, I'm going to final protective fire. Can he just fire his inherent firepower to do that? Can he just do a 4 plus 3 shot?
Protective has to use everything in the hex, doesn't it?
You got to use everything in the hex. So no, he's got to include the medium machine gun. So it's going to be an 8 plus 3 shot, and he rolls. What happens to the residual? It's now an 8 shot.
Goes up.
Yeah, it just goes up to 4, right? You don't add the 4 plus the 2 and get a 6 residual, right? You don't combine them.
Nope. Replace it.
Right. So now there's a 4 residual, and that was the leader assault moving in there. Now he had already taken the 2 plus 3 shot. Now he took an 8 plus 3 shot, and he survives. He's going to place the demo charge. Does he take the residual? He expended 2 more movement factors. Is there a 4 plus 3 shot for the residual?
Well, he just put that new residual down, and I guess he hasn't been hit by that. So I think he does, based on the earlier.
He does.
Session.
Yes. Yeah. So he took the 2 residual, but now it's a 4. It's a brand new. Basically, it's like a brand new residual in there. So he expends 2 movement factors. So he could, if this unit, as an example, and Eric did this to me actually. I had a German unit move in adjacent to his Russian 628s with a 10-0 commissar. So there was a residual that my leader had to take. Went in, he took the residual, and then Eric did final protective fire twice because I moved in there 2 movement factors, and then I used 2 movement factors to place that DC on there. So he did final protective fire 2 more times on me. So I had all of those shots. And can anybody guess what happened after residual plus 4 shots? Eventually, I failed a morale check. And as Eric said, I had to take my purse back and run away. All right, let's see. Next example.
Great ASL moment.
It was a great ASL moment. Let's see here. So, and what I just alluded to, if so I expend the 2 movement factors to place the demo charge, and on that final protective fire, my leader, he gets an effect and my leader breaks. Is the demo charge placed? Now remember, the squad here, he was placing smoke. The smoke was placed before the residual happened, right? And the same thing if he fired at the squad, with the squad expending movement factors to place smoke, it's after the smoke has been placed. How about with the demo charge?
It's got to survive all fire.
That's right.
In good
So
order.
the placing unit, should the placing unit survive all resultant fire, then the DC is operably placed. So you have to survive unbroken and unpinned.
If I may add, just during the movement phase. You can't
During the
break
movement
them
phase.
Yeah, you can't break them
Right.
in defensive fire phase and force them to take it back.
Nice clarification. Absolutely, Steve. Appreciate that. Yep. All right, let's move on to another example. Let's move down here. Let's see, where were we? Okay. So I've got this 666 here. He assault moves to P9. And my German Panzer is going to fire on him. He gets a hit. How much residual will there be from that 88? So 88's on the 16 column, right?
I think it's just half of that 16. I think it leaves an 8.
8. Okay. Now let's change this a little bit. This is what it was like before he started. The 88's buttoned up. He changes his covered arc and then fires and attains a hit. What's the residual?
If he gets a hit, I think it's the same. If he gets no hit, then nothing. Is that right?
No, the amount of residual left by any attack that has been determined, it's reduced 1 IFT column for each positive 2-hit DRM caused solely by conditions outside the target.
Okay.
So he's buttoned up, that's a +1. He changes covered arc, that's another +2. So that residual is reduced 3 columns.
Okay.
And that's an item I regularly forget, particularly buttoned up, because I generally drive my vehicles around buttoned up all the time. And when I leave residual, I just forget to shift it a column for that. Let's see here. Let's say he, let's see here, what was I going to do next? Can the, if the, let's do this. He's CE, didn't have to do a covered arc change, but there's a smoke on him. Can that Panzer get a hit? My unit was here in P8. The assault moves to P9.
Well, you'd need
So
to
what are
roll
all the?
really low, right? Like, is it a? Let me think.
Well, let's see.
8 to hit,
He's,
7 to hit, +4, buttoned up, +5.
no, he's not buttoned up. Saying he's CE.
Oh, he's not. Okay.
So the smoke will
Yeah.
make him +4. Height advantage takes him to +5. And then the building takes it to +8. So is it impossible to get a hit?
Don't you not use the height advantage if you have a building?
Yeah, you got one or the other, I think.
Oh yeah, you're right. So at any rate, so it'll be a +7.
+3, +7. I'm guessing that's not possible.
So the 2 hit, well, so it's not possible to gain a hit. Anybody disagree? I think it's 7 hexes away if I did this right. Any thoughts? I'm going to say that there is a way that he could get a hit. And I'm being very generic with a hit.
So do you mean he makes rate, gets an acquisition, makes rate
Nope.
again, gets another acquisition?
Use area target type.
It's easier than that. That's right. Steve, you said it. Change your target type. Area target type. So
the
now it's
TM would apply on the result and not the 2 hit.
right. So it's a +4 on the 2 hit, and in this case, there would be the height advantage, right? So a +5, but you need a 7 on the 2 hit with area target type. So you roll snake eyes. Now, granted, pretty low odds. You got to roll a 2, but it's something is better than nothing. All right. Let's say you roll that snake eyes and you get a critical hit on the area target type. What's the attack? What's it going to be resolved under?
Yeah. Double, so it'd be, did we say 32? Is that?
Yep.
Oh,
32, 16 doubled, 32.
but it's area target type. So it's, again, halved.
No, with a critical hit, you.
Oh, you're right.
Just
Yeah.
like with a
It's
mortar,
double. Yep.
you take the normal and double it.
Okay.
So critical hit on area target type is devastating. So so 16 times 2 is 32. There is no 32 chart, so it's a 30, and then it'll be a -3, 30 minus 3 on that, right? What residual would be left? It's got the smoke
12.
on there.
There's a
Oh,
trend.
yeah, because it's down.
Yep.
Yeah. Does it
Yeah.
start at 12 and go down for the smoke? Yeah.
Okay, so
Or does it not start at 12? Does it start at 16?
Well, the highest number it can start at, the most residual you can leave is 12. So I'm assuming it's
So
got
you
to
just-
start at 12. Or, well, I don't know. That's a good question.
so
Yeah.
it's
Does it start at the highest,
so
or does it
it's
start at 16 and goes down from there? And once you're done, it's if you're still greater than 16, if you're still greater than 12, you place 12.
well, it's where the math would be starting at well, the
Well,
residual starts at what number? So
Yeah.
is it 30 divided by 2
Would be
equals
15.
15 to 12 firepower? Or is it 32 since 16 doubled is 32?
Doesn't matter. You resolved it on the 30 columns. That's where you start from.
Exactly. That's the point. It's of the highest IFT firepower column used for that attack. So even if you had, if you had well, not 36, but if you had a 34 or 35, it's not half of 35, it's half of 30. So, yes. So half of 30 is 15. So the 12 firepower column, and then, but you had the +3 smoke on there. So what's the residual going to end up being?
8, 6, 8, 6, 4, 2.
2. Because with the smoke on top of the Panzer, it was a +4 modifier. So it shifts 4 columns. So even though you got that 30 minus 3 shot, all you left in residual was a little 2. And if somebody follows in behind them and assault moves, it's going to be a 2 + 3 shot. All right. And oh, by the way, if for some reason you assault move both of them at the same time, and just to go back with something we had talked about, and you got that critical hit, do they both take the 30 minus 3 shot? And the answer to that is no.
No. Yes. Only
Randomly selected. All right, next. This one here. Let's move this smoke out of here. So the 666 in R6, he assault moves to Q7, and the mortar is going to fire on him, and he gets a hit. And the 50 millimeter mortar, what does it attack under?
Area fire.
Area fire, right? So what's the what chart will you be rolling on?
I need to get my starter kit stuff out. I've got my regular ASL out. Hold on.
It's the same as regular. So 50 millimeter is on the 6 chart, but you go half of that, right? Since it's area fire. Takes you down to 3, but you use a 2 column. So move in there. He assault moved in the woods. It's a 2+3 shot. Went from R6 to Q7. Assault move there, and the mortar first fires. What's
So
the
two down, one shot, right?
2 down 1 because of air burst, right?
Yeah.
Now, what's the residual in there?
4. Or not 4, I'm sorry, 2. 2 down half to 1 and then go up a column for air bursts.
Right.
So 2.
And that's what I was going to, this one thing that I had completely forgotten. Air bursts increase the amount of residual firepower by 1 column. So half of the 2 is 1, but it was an air burst. So you leave a 2 residual there. Now this guy assault moves into there. What's the residual attack? There's a 2 residual. Is it a 2 minus 1, 2 plus 1, 2 even?
It's a 2 plus 1, right?
The 2 plus 1 residual has no memory. Oh, but then the mortar can fire again. You know, particularly if he kept rate. So, of course, if he kept rate, then what do we say about the residual?
Wouldn't be there.
It wouldn't be there, even for ordnance.
Again, unless you chose to forego your rate of fire.
Correct. So last couple items. So residual firepower can never form a fire group. I'm not exactly sure what kind of situation you would do a fire group. I guess I don't know how that. You might wonder if it would work, but at any rate, it must always attack alone. If
Doesn't it always have to be the first attack also?
yes, that's supposed to be resolved first. If I had something like this, and my German unit fires a Panzerfaust at that unit, Panzerfaust attack on the 16 firepower column, what residual does it leave behind?
I don't think
And
they
obviously,
leave anything.
right. Since I'm asking the question, it was a trick question. So Panzerfaust do not leave residual firepower. How about an ATR?
The same. It does not leave residual either.
No residual. And the last one, armor piercing. If you've got a vehicle or a gun, doesn't have any HE, and you're firing AP at infantry, AP ordnance does not leave residual. So ordnance less than 37 millimeter fires on the 1 firepower column. That one's easy. Half of 1 is 0.5. We don't have that chart. But equal to or greater than 37 millimeter, you're firing on the 2 firepower column, but it does not leave any residual. So once the movement phase is over, what do we do with all our residual?
On.
What's that?
It's gone, right?
It's gone. Remove all the residual firepower counters at the end of the movement phase. But after we've gone all through these things, in my mind, what does anybody think is the most important thing to remember about residual firepower as the defender? Any thoughts? Probably lots of answers to this, but I've got the answer that I'm looking for.
It'll attack over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Now,
Do you want to move into the hex and wait for the advance phase?
in my mind, the most important thing to remember about residual firepower is make sure you put the counter on the board. Don't forget to put on there. So most of us we're gentlemen players, and you make your shot, and I'm going to say, hey, don't, we move on to something else, like, hey, don't forget your 2 residual, don't forget your 4 residual. Playing somebody a little bit more competitive, or you're in a tournament, even if it's a friendly tournament, your opponent might just leave it up to you to remember to put your residual counters on the board. And if you forget it, well, then you just missed out on that. And we all know how powerful residual firepower can be, particularly if you lay down a wall on open ground defending your position. One thing I wanted to throw out to everybody, and perhaps there was one line in the rules that I didn't really quite come up with where it'd go, but it said here, a 2-kill attempt will leave residual firepower in the same manner, except when using armor piercing, unless fired by machine gun, ATR, APCR, or APDS. So what 2-kill attempt would leave residual firepower that doesn't fall into that? I guess if you're firing HE on the 2-kill? And I don't have the answer to this. I was just trying to figure out what the rules were trying to address.
I think that'd be it, Craig. A high explosive attack.
Yeah, high explosive, yeah.
Is there heat also?
Right.
There is heat. So does that fall under that as well, or is heat considered armor piercing?
High explosive anti-tank.
Right.
Yeah, but does heat leave? Is heat one of the exceptions to leaving residual at all?
Yeah, bazookas use heat.
Panzerfaust is a heat weapon, and they don't leave residual, but bazookas do, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Bazookas and Panzerschrecks, when they're both heat weapons.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
I thought it was more because the Panzerfaust was a one-shot weapon, and the other ones are reloadable. But I don't know.
Well, you're not firing again, but maybe it's just because of the nature of the weapon, or it's a small one. I don't know.
It might be a balance issue. It might be a game balance issue because technically your squad could fire 2 of them, whereas a bazooka is like a one-shot. I mean, technically you could have 2 bazookas, and there's no breakdown on a Panzerfaust. There's just, if you roll a 12, it's just nothing happens.
Right.
So I think it's a balance issue.
It's a dud. It's the only. So. All right. Well, that went a little longer than I thought it would, but
No, that's perfect.
Excellent.
Now you said something, and I had a comment. I forgot what the heck it was. Remember on your this is a while back on your on the attack for the Tiger tank made upon the 666 in P9 using area target type.
Yes.
What are the restrictions in using area target type? Doesn't apply most of the time, but sometimes you might run across it. What's the restriction in using area target type? You lose rate of fire, right? I mean, because you lose all rate of fire, so that's not what I'm looking for. Specific.
You can't use it as bounding first fire.
Okay. What about think of back of the counter. Click on show info on the tank. And then I'll get another vehicle. That's it. That's a clue.
So you can only fire
target
smoke
type in your own hex.
Dang it. Hold on a second. Vehicle.
So if you can't fire HE, then you couldn't, right? Because you can only fire smoke or HE with ATT.
Right. You have to have HE ammunition. And so what happens happens in those cases, there's a scenario in starter kit that has tank destroyers, the Jag Panzer 5s. And I'm not sure if there are any other scenarios like that. I'm trying to find the Jag Panzers. And here you are.
And they're armor piercing only. That's the only rounds. Is that the Hetzer Hunters? Is that the
it might be. It might be. Here's the Jag Panzer 5.
It's S50 and
so now,
there's an HE7 on there. So if you've got no HE, that's right. So you cannot area fire.
What do you want from
you cannot use area target type with armor piercing.
Shrimp Shummy. Yeah, so so in the HE7, so if he had HE, right, when you fire your area target type on him, a 7 or less, as long as it's a hit or whatever the case may be, he'd have to roll a 7 or less. If he needed an 8 to hit, let's say he had a -2 acquisition, and he rolls an 8, and that technically is his to hit number, does he actually perform an attack?
No, because it was above his depletion number. So
Correct.
he didn't have the round. He didn't make the shot.
Right, and then he'd be out of HE. And
Right.
in that specific scenario, these Jagdpanzer 5s are up against infantry, and that's where you got to make sure you got to flip that counter, because these bad boys can satisfy the victory conditions far better when they have a potential high explosive attack on whatever target they have to shoot at. But if you deplete your HE during the game, your contribution to the victory conditions is extremely lower. So these are not, in that particular scenario, these are not infantry hunters. These are strictly tank hunters, and just use your machine guns and stay away from the infantry. You don't want to be using your HE, because I think the difference is 16 firepower versus 2 firepower. And just another thing, just another reminder of flipping that counter over, reading your vehicle notes, making sure it has the ammo. And some vehicles, an overscore means what on the vehicle main armament? An overscore means what, and an underscore means what?
Overscore is no HE. Underscore is no.
Overscore is HE only. Underscore
Right.
is AP only.
Gotcha.
Right.
Now,
Unless there's a note on it.
right. Now, you may have a vehicle that has an overscore or an underscore, and then you click on it and show info. It may have an AP6 or an HE7 or something like that on the backside. So again,
And in Vassal it does, and in the game physical counters you'd refer to the vehicle notes or the back of the counter.
right, and that's very important. That's very important to just do a little bit of homework before, you know, if you're going to your buddy's house. Definitely, that's all like studying before the final. You know, you got to do the homework on the vehicles. or if he's setting up, if he's a slow defender, he sets up, then you look. Actually, I usually look at my stuff, and you just got to double check. I mean, I don't care how many times you've played, just double check, because you don't want to be rolling up your Jagdpanzer 5 and firing, you know, area target type, you know, point blank, and then you roll like an 8, and then he says, well, you know, nothing happens, and then this guy jumps in close combat and blows up your Jagdpanzer. So at that point, that Jagdpanzer really can't do much against that infantry without HE. So interestingly enough, but that Tiger sure as hell can blow a couple holes in those guys. Yeah, so very interesting.
That's everything you ever wanted to know about residual firepower, I believe. I don't think I missed anything. I think I covered pretty much all the type of little situations you're likely to encounter while playing a game of SK.
Hey, Craig, I've got one question, if you don't mind. What about concealment? I think we've covered this before, but honestly, I can't remember what the answer was. What if a concealed unit assault moves into a hex with residual? Is that treated as area fire, or does it fire at full?
No, it fires at full.
It does. That's what I thought the answer was. Yeah, I was trying to look that up the other day. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, residual is not affected by concealment. It's not changed by concealment, basically.
All right, that leads into another question. Okay, the 666 is concealed. The 447 fires upon that location. He's got an assault move, right? Because if he non-assault moves, he'll lose his concealment. If you guys are familiar with concealment, so he has concealment. 447 defensive fires upon him. What is the residual in that case?
Well, the residual in that case is still, I think, 1, right? Because that's what you resolved it on. Because you attacked him as a 2.
Yep.
And then
because you're firing as area fire, so it's halved, and then half of your attack is residual.
Okay, and then the AFV fires HE on him, fires the attack. What's the residual does he leave?
He would leave 2 less, because he would have to shift it by 2 columns to the left to account for the +2 for the concealment on his to hit roll.
So So you got to make sure those the concealment adds a lot more.
Although I got to ask the question with that. Now that I think about it, though, the +2 on the 2 hit
is not outside
in the target hex.
Right.
It's not outside the target hex. So, does the residual shift 2 columns because of that?
I don't think it does. It's outside the target hex.
It's
just harder to hit.
target.
It's just a lot harder to hit, right? Even if he fires area
Right.
target type. I don't think the area target type. Maybe not. No, I don't think it applies. I think somebody asked a question 2 days ago. But if it's a direct fire shot, the +2s is going to be taken into account. He's going to hit a lot less often. But yeah, and so I just kind of showed the difference between ordnance fire and infantry fire table shots on concealed units. Again, that's starting at 4 plus for those that are in the starting at 4 sort of series sort of thing. Concealment.
I think the +2 concealment applies even with area target type, but I'm trying to look through the chart to see.
Somebody had that based on smoke, on a smoke target. Like if he's firing smoke at an empty hex, do you add 2? That was just like posted yesterday or today. Do you add 2 for a possible hidden unit? And the answer is no. It's not applicable for smoke placement. But
yeah, for smoke placement, I could see where it's not because you're just firing into a hex.
Right. But if you want a potential effect, if you want a potential effect versus anybody, you'd have to hit a concealed unit in that location. But yeah, that's SK4, and I don't think a lot of us are playing SK4. But I just kind of want to bring that up in case for
a lot of us are moving that way.
Right, and I've seen a lot of you guys be playing a little bit of ASL. The concealment starts to add a little couple, bent wrenches into the game plan sort of thing there, and thus the importance of concealment is very much a consideration in most if not all of your games. Concealment is huge. If anything, the very simplistic fact that infantry fires halved against you. I mean, that's, if anything, if you understand anything about concealment at all, that's all you really need to know. So getting concealment, his firepower is half, and that his 20 stack that I talked about before becomes an 8 firepower shot, and +3 building. That's pretty good. So, but anyway, I did track. But yeah, that's absolutely fantastic presentation. Residual firepower, a small section in there, but its application and execution during a game is huge. And these questions come up all the time, especially the demo charge and the smoke one. Those are all the time because a lot of players consider those the same type of movement factor expenditures, but demo charge, again, very similar to like the armor piercing rounds and the heat rounds, is the rulebook doesn't say heat rounds. The rulebook only says AP, ATR, APC, so on and so forth. So if it's not amongst those listed, then it will leave residual. And the demo charge, the placement of the demo charge in the demo charge rules, it doesn't say that in the other sections. It says it specifically in the demo charge rules is you must survive unpinned, unbroken, and yada 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 to be able to place the demo charge, and that's specific within that rule set. And sometimes you got to dig around a little bit, but it will be there. It will be there. That's one thing about the rules is sometimes you got to dig a little, but you should be able to find your answer most of the time. Most of the time, if not all the time. So, I think that's why a lot of people stick around with ASL, is because the rules can either be explained or found, whereas some other rule systems, they might not have an answer for it. And but when you have a game that's 30 years old, you're probably going to have something like that. So, but very cool. Wow, this is impressive. This is impressive. Any other questions for Craig, or any other comments for anything else that might have come up here? Demo charge usage, area target type, anything that Craig has touched upon. Do you guys have questions for him?
I have one quick question about the DRMs for resolving the residual, because all it says in the book, it talks about using the TEM in smoke of the area and FFMO and FFNAM, right? So how do we get that you can use like a -1 for having a flamethrower or like a -1 for manhandling something as a DRM for resolving residual? Is that something that came from like Big Book ASL that they forgot to leave out of SK, or you know what I mean?
Well, at least the -1 for, you mean like if you take the residual again?
Right. So if you enter a hex with residual and you're carrying a flamethrower,
Yes.
you're going to use the -1 DRM for having a flamethrower, right?
Yes.
But I don't get that from the sentence that says the TEM smoke of the target location and the FFNAM or FFMO apply. So is it just because maybe the flamethrower section says that when you're rolling on the IFT, you use that DRM? We just have to go to
Yes.
another section and get it. Okay. That's
Yes. Yeah.
that's the things I hate
Yep.
about SK is it puts stuff in different sections of the rule book that apply to
Well,
the same situation.
and I think even in the big book that you can't list all the all the possible situations, or weapons or thing. It'll list a couple examples, but in this one, flamethrowers, you just have to remember, well, when you're carrying a flamethrower around, you get a -1 DRM. I think it'd be hard for someone writing the rule book to list all of the possible cases that would apply to a particular rule. So I mean, I agree with you. The SK rule book, there are pieces that are stuck in long verbiage that you have to pull out, but this is one where I don't think it necessarily needs to be listed. So, but yes, that's where it'd be. And I'm trying to I found the flamethrower section. I just don't see where it says -1.
I was just going to say two things on what you said about the rules. With the regular rule book, I mean, I agree you can't find everything, but I think the index is really good. It really has a lot of references. And then the other thing I was going to say is the electronic, rules. And again, this isn't starter kit. This is the full Monty. And I've got the electronic rule book. I haven't really used it a whole bunch yet, but I had a feeling that you could do a lot better searching, online.
Well, I do use both the electronic for the starter kit and the full ASL. But it's just, like I said earlier, that one sentence under residual tells you what to use for modifiers, but then I don't think the flamethrower DRM falls under that, or nor does manhandling, because they're not TEMs or smoke or anything like that. So, but I understand what that Craig's saying is the answer is that you're just going to have to remember to use it.
Right.
Yeah, it's just one of those
And I
things.
found the sentence. It's any unit possessing a flamethrower must deduct 1 per flamethrower possessed from the IFT resolution die roll of any attack against it. So it's pretty clear
that's where it
would apply to any attack.
Okay.
And,
fine.
And I'll bet the manhandling modifier says the same, probably same kind of thing.
I'm sure it does. So I just got to remember if in the rule book, if there's somewhere it says you use this modifier for an IFT die roll, then that's going to apply to residual, because it doesn't specifically say you don't. And okay,
right,
makes sense. All right, thank you.
Right, Eric, do you highlight your electronic rule books?
I do, but I also take notes out for certain things that that apply to certain situations. So, for example, residual, I kind of got a little block that says everything to do with residual. I just cut and paste from the rule book into that little section. So if I'm going to do residual, I look at that thing, that little note.
Okay.
Make sure I remember this, and this, that kind of thing. So I do highlight the rule book also, but I kind of try to find everything that applies to one specific situation and put it in one area. So when I'm doing that one thing, I look at that.
Very cool. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, especially like everyone's been saying about the SK rule book, because of the structure of it. Highlighting those one sentences that are in the middle of that column can be huge in finding or remembering what that modifier or effect or so on and so forth might be. So, and funny thing is, I never used to highlight anything, but now it's almost mandatory for the SK rulebook, and it's easy to do. So,
by the way, I just realized we made a mistake before early on when we had this one, medium machine gun and the squad firing at that 747. And I'd asked the question, if you rolled boxcars, if you rolled 12, what's the residual there? And we
I was
said,
wondering if you would catch that. The answer is, of course, 2 because they cower.
They cowered. Yep.
Well,
so you don't include the medium machine gun.
The machine gun breaks, so it actually would only be 1 because the squad cowered.
Cowers, yes. Yep. So the machine gun breaks, malfunction machine gun or gun, and actually I think I did forget one other thing was if our Tiger here gets a hit, this was the one I was going to do. So we're here. Yeah, thank you. So let's say this unit, there's a 2 acquisition here on him, and God knows why he'd do this, but he uses normal movement and goes down there, and our Tiger fires on him and rolls boxcars. Does he get a hit?
Infantry is 8 minus 2 for non-assault moving in the open and minus 2 for the acquisition, so that would be a 12. So yeah, you hit.
It's got a hit. What residual will be left?
None, because the gun would be broken.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep.
So that is an example of a boxcar actually generating a hit.
Right.
Just as there are minor circumstances and you have to really contrive one, but if you roll like boxcars on a morale check, most people just assume they break, but that's not absolutely positively true. The casualty reduction is a given, but if you have like a -3 leader or something like that, you might survive the morale check. You might not actually break.
No, the 12 will break him. The 12 will break him.
Yeah. So if let's say you got a -3 leader with a commissar, do you get to apply both? You got the commissar there, so your morale's increased.
Right. So if you're
or even a -2 leader, you got a 628 with a commissar and a -2 leader.
Yeah. So his morale would be a 9. Well, his morale would be a 9 because the commissar raises
-2 in the.
But
and then whatever you rolled, you'd subtract. Right. You'd subtract 2. So if you actually roll boxcars, that would still be a break. But if you had a -3 leader, it would be a pin.
Yeah.
A -3 leader wouldn't make a difference if you roll a 12.
Why not?
A 12 is going to be a casualty reduction, and that unit is automatically broken regardless.
That's a good point. Yeah. Well, no. But let's say
is it automatically broken? No.
Yeah.
It's a 628, so he'd be casualty reduced to a 328.
Right, and broken.
No, he's not necessarily broken. Casualty reduction happens.
Correct.
But the morale check is the morale check.
Right, but the 12 is the problem. The dice roll of 12 is the problem.
Yeah, but the 12 is you casualty reduce.
Oh, and break. You do casualty reduce and break. Yes, Stu's right.
Is that
we're thinking about a.
The numbers add up to like 13 or something like that. Yeah.
You're thinking, Mark. You're thinking if your opponent rolls, say, a 3 on the 8 chart and it's a K2, you casualty reduce and then take the 2 morale check. But if you got a 2 morale check and you roll boxcars, you casualty reduce because of the boxcars and you failed the 2 morale check. Or right.
By virtue of rolling the 12, you are broken.
Right. And casualty reduced.
Right. It's bad. 12's bad any day of the week. Although the numbers primarily the numbers, the casualty reduction rule of the dice roll of 12 overrules the passing of the morale check. Because you casual reduce and break versus just casual reduce. Now, if it just said casual reduce, then you would be fine. If it says a dice roll of 12 casual reduces anybody, then it would just be, as Craig said, it would just be like a K result. You're casual reduced and you passed your morale check. But with a dice roll of 12 straight up, you would be you're banged up and broken. So always bad. Always a bad on 12. So don't roll 12s. And that's, you know.
Yeah, a unit that rolls an original 12 on a morale check suffers casualty reduction in addition to breaking. So there's modifiers don't apply.
And sort of going back on the MMG malfunction and the cowering, that's one thing that the positive players can look forward to when using Russian equipment, because they malfunction on 11, so you actually would leave full residual for your squad. So the Germans get screwed, but the Russians, you know, they have to do a lot of repairing, but their residual firepower from the mouth weapons is a little bit better. You always got to look on the positive, bright side. So. Oh my gosh.
All right. What else are we going to talk about?
So I had a question on your Commissar 9-2. So in a fire attack, you're applying the increase in the morale and the -2. But would you also do that in a rally situation?
Yes. The
oh, I see. Yeah.
So with a commissar, the morale of the unit is increased, and oh, by the way, if it's under DM, the DM doesn't apply with a commissar in there. And then if you've got a 9-2 leader, you know, if you got a 6-2-8, it's flipped over. He's got a morale of 9. He's in a building. All he needs is a 10 to rally. If you got a -1 or -2 leader, I guess. If you rolled a 12, you'd casualty reduce, but you'd rally, right?
No,
Do you think?
The 9
Would you
minus
casualty reduce and rally at the same time?
No, but Craig, the 9-2 can't rally the unit. The commissar has to rally the unit, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you can't apply that leadership. Right.
That's what I thought, because there's always possibility he's going to shoot him.
Yeah, you can't. Right.
Now,
yes.
Now, when you're firing and you final protective fire, you do get the modifier for the -2 leader for directing your attack, and you get the morale boost from the commissar. So that does apply in conjunction with one another. But yeah,
like if you're doing final protective fire,
right? You'll still get both. You'll still get the -2 modifier on the attack if you choose to use it, and then you get the modifier for the Oh, that brought up a good thing. I mean, and then you get the modifier for the commissar, because all you have to do is be in the same location as the commissar. So on final protective fire, this came up in a game that I was watching just today or last night. Example given here, and this is something you may consider when you're doing your attack, and it's very situational. And it's very easy if it's a 0 leader. So let me put the example here, and I didn't actually realize it until I was watching the game, and thus the advantage of watching other people play. So we have this situation here. 8-1 here. The stack is first fired, okay, and then he's subsequent first fired, and now he's in a final protective fire situation. Your morale is 7, right? So the question arises is, in this case, do you wish to direct your unit in its final protective fire attack? Matter of fact, let's put him something like this in this sort of situation. They're final fired. You want a final protective fire against this unit. Do you want to, or would you, I mean, there's no right answer here, but then we're just considering the implications of final protective fire. Do we want to fire the 8-1 with the 4-4-7 against the 7-4-7? Do we have, first of all, do we have to direct that shot?
No, you do not.
Okay. If this unit is subject to final protective fire, will he benefit from the leadership's modifier in his location?
As long as you don't roll. Well, as long as you don't roll an 8 or higher, but yeah, so probably not.
I think so.
Right. So
Yeah,
if
you
you
roll an 8 or higher, you're not
so you
going to
wouldn't
get
be going. If you rolled an 8 or less, you're
No,
okay,
an
as
8,
opposed to a
10's
7 or less.
Okay. We looking at the numbers here. Do you think you see where I'm going with this, gentleman?
Yeah.
So if the 447 rolls an 8 on his attack, he pins, correct? Because the leadership dice roll modifier can be applied to his morale check, because the morale check is not an attack; it's a morale check.
Wait, what'd you roll? You rolled an 8, and did you include the leader or not include the leader?
We're not including the leader. That's
including the
that's
leader.
the point I'm trying to get to. Yeah, we're not including the leader in the attack. We're not directing the unit's attack. We're simply in the location. We're simply in the location. So
if the leader is not directing the attack, he can still apply his -1 modifier to the morale check portion of the final protective fire.
Right. That's the question. I'm not sure if that's explained in the thing. I'm pretty sure the answer is he can do that. But the implication is if we roll doubles, we will cower, correct? Because we're not,
and you forego the -1.
You're not directing the fire, right?
And we're foregoing the -1.
Yeah.
Let's say we roll a 9. What happens?
You break.
Okay. Tell me again. Not only do you think about routing in the movement phase, but you also in this instance you're thinking about the rally in the defensive fire phase. What does this allow you to do as the German player when you break? Let's say the American subsequent attack in the advanced fire phase has no effect. What does this give you versus, well, if we rolled a 9 and I directed his attack, what would the result be?
Everybody breaks.
Okay. What happens then? We route, right? Let's just say we route across the street. Okay. German turn comes. Leader's got to rally before this guy does anything. Right? We're shed out of luck if the leader doesn't rally. The leader does not participate in the fire attack. Unit breaks. What happens?
Well, if you want to take, in this case, you could, even if you take interdiction, the leader can route with the squad, and his leadership modifier would apply to interdiction if you wanted to take the chance on interdiction.
Right. And what do we have in the next rally phase? A functioning leader.
Oh.
As well. You know, we don't have to rally the leader to rally the unit. We have a functioning leader with the unit. Now again, do you want the -1 in the attack? It's up to you. But if you break, you don't get to rally him in the next phase. Again, very situational, very dependent upon what you're doing. Something to consider.
So Stu, here's something that you just reminded me of, and Mark might remember our situation. So let's say we got this and we do final protective fire, and Mark's playing, so he rolled boxcars.
Mm-hmm.
Oof.
So somebody's going to casualty reduce. Random selection chooses the leader, and Mark's still rolling, and he rolls a 6. So the leader dies, and the squad is broken. Does the squad take a leader loss morale check?
I would say yes.
Okay. What if?
Okay.
I would agree with you. Now wrong vehicle. Let's do it this way. So the Americans, the Germans are moving, and the Tiger goes into that hex with the Americans, and they pass their patsy. And now in reaction fire, they roll boxcars. So somebody's casualty reduced. The leader is chosen and rolls a 6 and is eliminated. Does the squad take a leader loss morale check?
I don't think so, since it's a close combat reaction fire attack, correct?
Yeah, that's the answer we came up with, since it was
Right.
since you don't take a leader loss morale check in close combat, even though this is reaction fire. It's reaction fire close combat. That was the conclusion we came to.
Right. It's a close combat
I think
attack
that's right.
versus an attack in the close combat phase. Yeah. So he would be marked with. So technically, you would mark this unit with a CC. So therefore, identifying it as a close combat attack, and all benefits and negatives, things that go along with it. You know.
Right.
So yeah, that's a big distinction. That's because that can come up. That can come up.
Well, and it obviously did in our case, but as we said, it's another example of SK perhaps not being quite as clear. Whereas the ASL rulebook, when they're defining CC reaction fire, they specifically say this is like close combat except for these 4 points.
Yeah, exactly.
And points is not you have to take a leader loss morale check if your leader fights the dust.
Right.
You know, during the time. So yes.
Yeah. The SK rulebook says I guess resolve it like close combat, but it was vague enough that made us question.
Right. Exactly. And those come up. Now back on the final protective fire shot over. That's a very good example. Now here, same sort of thing. You don't have a leadership modifier, right? And if they final protective fire together as a group, you know, what are you gaining? What are you gaining with a fire group versus the 447 by himself? You're not gaining much, in my opinion, because for most of all, the 8 firepower, you know, +2 against the stone. Let's say if he's like in a woods or something like that, it's pretty good. But I would probably almost always forego, unless you've got some other a huge reason to direct that fire with the leader. Remember, most of your cowering attacks won't make that much of a difference unless they're extremely low firepower. If this guy fires his machine gun and rolls a 6 or less, 6, 4, or 2, those are still going to have effects upon this unit moving, non-assault moving. Even if you cower, the only ones that will not have an effect are 8, 10, and 12. Guess what happens on 8, 10, and 12? We break. So nothing happens and you break. So why risk the leader? At this point, don't risk the leader. Now, yeah, if you put the 10 - 3 there, that's a different story. Unless you're Mark.
Right.
Unless you're Mark, then that 12 rule comes into play pretty quickly, pretty often. So at that point, yes, that makes a big difference. 9 morale leaders as well. Nines, again, that's why I love the 9 - 1s. They're not 8 morale. 9 is pretty good. Now the only problem that you would have with the 9 morale, and even that you have with the 8 morale, is, and again, it's his turn, correct, gentlemen? It's his turn. So we fire our 8 - 1 or 9 - 1 leader. Let me clone him. Let me boost him up. Okay. We got either one of these gentlemen in our location, and we don't have any supporting units. Well, it doesn't matter whether we have supporting units or not. This unit, we roll an 8 on the attack. Well, the 8 on the attack. Well, yeah, doesn't matter. We roll an 8 on the attack. What happens with the 8 minus? What happens when we have the 8 - 1 in the situation? We roll an 8. Boom. Double
He's
4.
pinned, right?
Leader's pinned. What happens to the squad?
Breaks.
They break. They don't get the -1.
They don't get the -1. Okay. So this is because he directed the attack. This unit breaks. Route phase comes. What happens?
Squad runs away and the leader's stuck.
He's waving goodbye.
And what's the 747 going to do to that leader?
Hurt him.
He's going to hurt him badly. Okay. Again, that's an 8. If you roll an 8, you essentially lose the squad, and you definitely lose the leader. I don't care what type of firepower this unit is going to be subjected to when he enters that location. This could be open ground. I am going into that location and killing that leader with any unit that I have. I'm probably not throwing my leader out there in the road. The leader's probably going to stay here, and my other unit's going to move up. But I'm throwing any type of multi-man counter against that unit to kill that leader. 100% of the time. Again, the 8-1 doesn't have to break. Same thing with the 9-1. If we roll a 9, right? He pins, he breaks, he's stuck, he leaves, he dies. Simply because you directed his attack. I just discovered this because I watched the replay yesterday. It's like the guy fired, he had like a 7-0 leader, and he fired, and that's exactly what the hell happened. Is that his leader was pinned, his unit got broken, he routed away, and the leader died. It's like the leader actually did not contribute anything to the fight. Don't be afraid of cowering. Your 2s, 3s, and 6s on the 8 firepower char or higher will still have an effect. It will still have an effect. If you're just firing 4 firepower, your 2s and 4s will still have an effect. Okay? And then you only have 3. The half of the cowering dice rolls you're going to break. So we just throw those out the door because we want to not cower so we could damage the enemy. The 8, 10, and 12 isn't damaging anybody at the lower fire column at 8 or below. Because most likely at 8, we're not going to have a strong enough leader. We're not going to have a ton of 9-1s running around to keep our asses alive when we roll that 8. So the 8, I put in the you're dead column. It's very important. It's that very subtle. Just don't worry about the cowering. Don't worry about the cowering. Because, again, let's say you have no effect and he fires upon you. And he rolls a morale check on your guys. And your leader passes and your squad breaks. Well, now we're situation square one. We still get to route with our unit. And we're alive because we're slightly higher morale factor. This is 100% far better situation than our pinned unit, pinned leader here, and our broken unit across the street. This is a loss of a leader. Yeah, you want to avoid. I don't care if he's a 6+1. You want to avoid that at all costs. At all costs. So very subtle distinction there. And again, something that I just kind of picked up watching somebody else's game. It's like, this kind of developed, and yeah, he really got hosed for it, and it really makes a difference. You guys know the value of leaders, or you damn well better should. You know the value of leaders, and what they bring to the party, and that's primarily one of the reasons why I don't necessarily like to have leaders with demo charges. Again, if you're talking about stone buildings all the time, I don't think there's that much of a problem. If you're talking about a wooded environment, don't send the leader to do the dirty work, because he's going to break just as easily as the 747 is going to be breaking. And you can rally the 747, and especially if he's a minus leader. 8-0, yeah, you could do it sometimes, but that wouldn't be my first realm. Again, it's a game of maneuver. If he breaks your leader, he reduces your rally capability and he reduces your maneuverability. And so that's a double win. Plus, the demo charge is beside the point. He gets bonuses when he breaks your leader. He doesn't necessarily get much more when he just simply breaks a squad. So I would caution the automatically putting DCs on leaders. Unless, of course, again, you've got +3 terrain to go through, +2 terrain that you can assault move in and drop it, where you are highly protected. And that just goes with the strategy of the fewer dice roll modifiers that you're giving your opponent that will benefit him, the better off you are. If you have to take a longer route and drop it next turn, get the +3. If you can.
So Stu, I gotta share with you, that example that I told you about where I had my 8-0 leader with a demo charge, trying to place it on Eric's Commissar 628 in a stone building.
What happened?
Well, I had an assault engineer had actually put a smoke in the building that my 8-0 leader assault moved in. So he was taking these +5 shots against me.
Oof.
And after 4 rolls, he finally rolled low enough and I rolled high enough. So my demo charge never got placed.
Oh, +5.
I figured a +5. I'm guaranteed to get that thing placed. A +5.
What's the only way to guarantee placing a demo charge, people? The one guarantee, 100% of the time you can place your demo charge. Well, maybe. I'm not sure. I have to check the rules. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's applicable. Smoking. If you're both smoked, you can't see one another, but I'm not sure you have to see the enemy if you place the demo charge. You might have to.
Oh, that's a good. Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah.
But if you're +2 here and you smoke him with a +3, where's that big smoke? Somebody had that big smoke. Damn it. Oh, where's that smoke? Oh, come on. Thank you so much. You smoke his ass.
I don't think you have to see him.
Right. So if he's I'm not sure if you have to see him or not. Or let's say that's let's see if that's +2.
Well, but the smoke in my hex, is that a hindrance or a TEM?
That would be a hindrance. Yeah, I'm not sure if you have to see him. You guys might have to look. I don't know where that is. But that's
DC rules right now.
DC 4.3.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious. Run line of sight from M4 to L4. So it's ghosted out. Somebody's got line of sight running.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
That it is for me.
Clicked. An adjacent target during its movement phase. Adjacent is not capitalized in the SK rulebook. I'm not sure if there's a distinction. There might be in the ASL rulebook. But in the SK rulebook, using the convention of capital adjacent, it
right, which implies
well, you don't have an upstairs, so this doesn't apply.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be a small leak in the SK rules. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of them. Oh yeah, here it is. A DC is placed on an adjacent target location, and it is capitalized in ASL, which means which means line of sight is required. Yep. So that doesn't seem to apply in SK.
Okay. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, there's a couple things. A couple people, very sharp people, have asked some very inquisitive questions that pretty much flip SK rules on their heads. And but yeah, smoke again. Smoke the living crap out of them, gentlemen. A 30 chart, don't worry about it. It's either smoke your hex so he can't fire on you, or smoke his hex, and you're essentially +7 right there, right? Because if you assault move here, and if he fires upon you, +7. So if you've got this tank here, and if it's a SP gun, like the big guns, the Stooge 4s, something like that, don't fire your 105 on him. Don't fire your 75 on him. Fire your smoke round on him. That nullifies this guy. He's firing out here at +4. You can dance naked in the streets, and he probably can't do a damn thing to you. Any movement in the street is essentially a stone building. Because non-assault movement's -1. He's got +4 from firing out. You've got a +3 net in open ground. So you just walk right on by him to your destination and you win the game. Well, you drop tons of demo charge. You drop like 3 demo charges on them.
Because you want to make really sure.
Yeah, because on average, the first one's going to be a 12, the second one's going to be an 8, and one of them is going to be less than a 5. So there you go. 8, 10, 4.
There you go. All right.
So one of them will have an effect. The other ones are garbage. The other ones are just empty boxes. So yeah, definitely use your smoke, gentlemen. If you have a tough time attacking people, don't fire your gun. If you've got smoke, drop smoke in front of them. Hell, even if you're desperate, like this thing here, he doesn't have. He has a SN, so it means he has a smoke. I think he still has a smoke discharger on this.
SNs do. Yeah.
You might consider driving this building and dropping an SN on it, which will leave a dispersed smoke in that location. Whether you're moving or not is, beside the point. Maybe you still can move and you just move out, and then your other unit can come behind him. Because what does that make your destination here if he fires upon you? That's +5 TEM plus non-assault movement. That's a +4. That's a fortified location. The smoke, I can't emphasize the importance of dropping proper smoke rounds at the right time, because I can't hit anything. I can't hit anybody in a building. I just can't. I'm a stone building, wooden building, reduced hut. I don't care. I can't hit anybody in buildings. They have to be an open ground, moving in the open. For me, I just can't rely on that. So I'm thinking smoking first, and then moving my tank later if he's got smoke. Even the shitty American tanks with smoke 5. But the German tanks, a lot of the German tanks have very, very effective smoke making capabilities. All their SP guns, like smoke 9. We're talking smoke 8, smoke 9. I mean, that's almost guaranteed. That's guaranteed a +3 smoke wherever you're dropping it. And it blocks line of sight on all the hex sides. So not only can you affect the location that you're going to nullify, but if you're moving across the street here and you've got, say somebody firing from a German fire from this location over here, you're still hitting the smoke. Make use of that hex sides. Make use of the hex side. And your opponent will say, damn, Same thing with your little smoke grenades, and you'll see how effective it is. Again, especially if you have the 747s, 628s, like Craig had in his game. 628 747s. If you get 548s, if you have any slight advantage in close combat, and if you think close combat's an effective strategy in that particular instance, you have the advantage in close combat. He's 1 to 2 most of the time, and you're 1 to 1, so you have a huge advantage. A 5 versus a 4. Hopefully you'll win that. At least put him in melee and bring up another squad. Now you got 2 to 1, and he's really going to be behind the 8 ball. But we don't like CC, do we, gentlemen? CC is very, very fickle. So, but yeah, absolutely, Craig. I appreciate you bringing your excellent presentation, Craig, with lots and lots of examples. I can't think of any other examples. Very important concept, very simple concept, but yet very impactful in your games. Just like all the questions that were posed today. Do you get the -1 modifier for air burst for residual firepower? There's no memory. It's right there all the time. Do you get the +1 height advantage for residual? Nope. It's just in the hex. It's not outside the hex. Very easy way to remember. I got that question a lot. It's like, maybe it does. I don't know. But that's, that distinction of +1 being in the hex means by default, by the residual firepower rules, it's not outside the target hex. And so therefore that makes it really easy to remember that rule. And I hadn't thought of that before. So very important. And the critical hits, all that stuff, we'll probably forget it. I always forget all that stuff. But again, just a quick reference back to your book on something you might be hazy at, or things like that. And always, that's what I remembered. This is what it was. Residual firepower. If I believe it's sort of like snipers, although we don't play with snipers. the rules, technically the rules state that when you fire, of course, your machine gun can make a difference based upon whether you maintain your rate of fire or not, right? If you maintain your rate of fire, and about 99% of us will say, fine, I'm going to keep rate of fire because you got a couple more guys moving. That's pretty much the determining factor, you know, if you've got other guys to fire at or whatever. But, God, where's the residual firepower? Damn it. I want to find that rule section because I need to read it to you. Shit, is it 4? 4.2? Here it is, 3.3.5. Okay. Reading the first sentence. Okay, when a unit is attacked by defensive first fire, SFF or FPF, the location in which the attack is resolved is marked with a residual firepower counter equal to half, so on and so forth. Although a weapon that malfunctions, intensive fire, maintains, needs no residual firepower. Okay, so when you state, I got rate of fire, right? I maintained rate of fire. And this is a point of maybe a bone of contention with some players. But very similar to snipers, a question comes up a lot of times with snipers. Do I call out the guy's sniper roll? The rules do not state that you may be subject to a sniper attack. The rules activate the sniper regardless of whether the owner of that sniper, or in this case, the firer of the weapon, remembers to place residual firepower. The rules simply state the location in which the attack resolved is marked with a residual firepower counter. Now, as a defender, if I'm moving, as technically attacker, I can say, are you keeping rate or whatever? So if you keep rate, it's not, if you know he should leave residual there, yet he forgets, it still should be the onus of the player because the rules do not state you may leave residual firepower there. When you fire upon a location, as long as, whatever, you will leave residual firepower there. Is marked with a residual firepower counter. His selection of retaining, if he rolls a 1 or 2 on the colored die roll, it's his choice, and that's where the may comes involved. If he chooses to maintain this, then that simply changes that number there. If he chooses not to maintain that, then we put the appropriate marker there. If the opposing player lets you slide like that a lot, I might remind him of that. That placement of residual firepower is not optional. Not optional. Like if we had 2 squads. Right? Not optional. You simply place residual firepower. Sniper rolls, you activate the sniper. Not you may activate the sniper, you activate the sniper. So it's sportsmanship because lots of things happen in our game. We forget lots, we're concerned with 800 things at any given second. Little things like this, which have a great impact, are just done that way. Plus, you'll earn a little bit more just gentlemanly sportsmanship respect from your opposing player. Well, at least you should. Say, okay, there's a 4 residual firepower there. And you should expect that as a player, right? He's going to fire upon you. You're expecting him to leave residual firepower. If he forgets, don't take advantage of a player that happens to forget. If he's, maybe he's having a bad day at work or some shit like that, and he's just rolling dice. Just say, you the 2 residual firepower, But that is a, again, Craig was mentioning tournaments and things like that. I would definitely, tournaments, everyone says, a bunch of great guys on tournaments. Yeah. $5 plaque, guys might want to avoid your sniper rolls and your residual firepower. When the rules specifically state you simply place them. So technically he would be violating. You might forget the rule, he would be violating the rule. So you forgetting the residual firepower is one thing. him neglecting to put it on there, in my opinion, as a gamer, is a completely different topic. So that's just from my perspective. And again, he's expecting residual firepower to be placed there. And because you forget it, does that give him the onus of not having to place it there? In my opinion, and by the rules, it does not. It gets placed there anyway. So, something to consider. And again, it's a game. We're here to have fun. You know, especially like if he's running down a road in SK and you leave a whole bunch of residual firepower, and that's his only way of going. You know, that's, you know, if it takes you to accidentally forget that, and all your guys keep running through, and no residual fire ever gets placed, you know, if it takes that for you to win the game, did you really win the game? You know, sort of thing. I mean, I'm here to have fun. Maybe you should have done something earlier in the game so you're not restricted to one avenue of approach, that all he has to do is drop tons of residual firepower down. And that's, again, that's from my perspective. It's more of a, I like to play the game and have fun. Winning is tertiary. Having fun and learning are the first two things that I want to do. Winning and losing is, you know, beside the point. You know, it doesn't really matter. As long as the game is engaging and challenging, the result doesn't matter. And almost all your ASLers will say that. And I think you guys would probably agree to as well. But I like to have fun, and I like to learn. I like to learn something every single game. And that's just me. That's my objective in my ASL quote career. Is have fun and learn. Because there's a lot of learning. You guys know that. The rule books, there's a lot to learn. You're not going to stop learning, and that's the beauty of it. As long as you learn a little bit more, you're fine. So that's my 2 cents on that. And yeah, I happen to remember that. I would have forgotten that last week. So thank you, gentlemen, and thank you 100-fold to Craig in presenting his expertly presented residual firepower session here. Hopefully my damn video didn't screw up and it's clean. I tested it out 5 minutes before we started. It seemed to be okay, but you know, whatever. So I think this would be a very good, I mean, it's just perfect. That's all there is to it, in my opinion. I think we covered a lot of good questions. Thank you, gentlemen. I've got to get off, but if you guys want to continue the discussion, please feel free to do so. Craig has his screen is shared there, obviously, which is a huge benefit of Discord. So thank you so much, gentlemen.